Hi, welcome to my podcast, Reclaim. I am your host, Thaís Sky. I have supported women navigate the complexities of being human for over 10 years. This podcast is where I disseminate some of those learnings and offer thoughts and guests to guide you into your healing. Welcome. Hello, everybody. Thaís Sky here. Welcome to Reclaim the podcast. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. I love hearing how much this podcast has touched the world, and I'm just so grateful that you are here. I took about a 2-week hiatus from podcasting, from social media. And let me tell you what, my break has not been restful. It has not offered me respite because you know what? Wherever you go, there you are, right? There's something bubbling within me. There's change that's happening, and it's leading to a lot of feelings of being stuck, feelings of needing to make a decision fast. And so I wanted to spend this episode talking a little bit about impulsivity. This is something that I have grappled with for a long time. Most of my life, I would argue. And I don't see it being talked that often. So if you consider yourself impulsive or spontaneous or a fast decision maker, someone who with a sense of urgency in your life where life is about boom, 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 forward, doing, acting, making shit happen, this episode may resonate with you. Now, before I get too deep into this episode, I just want to let you all know that I am officially taking on new one-on-one coaching clients. Doors open from my wait list for one-on-one coaching clients only a few times a year. And right now I have availability to take on a handful of new clients. I'm so excited at the opportunity to welcome in new people who are interested in cultivating a deeper spaciousness within themselves, that are interested in healing the worthiness wound, who are desperately wanting to get support around finding wholeness, finding deeper healing, finding a capacity to be with really difficult emotions. I work with women who identify as sensitive, as smart, as soulful, and who are wanting to go deeper within themselves and know that they can't do it alone. And they're looking for a guide to support them in really tackling deeper, entrenched patterns of self-sabotage, of getting in their own way, so that they can take up greater space in the world. I work with the seekers, the visionaries, women who are thirsty to understand themselves more. And I bring my expertise of being a coach for over 10 years and my master's in clinical psychology and my own personal experience of doing this work since I was 18 years old. And I've worked with hundreds of women all over the world and guiding them into themselves. And I bring all of that into our work together. I love working with women and watching them blossom and find more fulfilling relationships and find more purpose in their lives and just feel like they can take up greater space without feeling so inadequate all the time. Because chronically navigating the worthiness wound and feeling like you are constantly battling yourself is exhausting. It can take up so much mental weight to be constantly having to prove yourself, to feel like if you don't do amazing, wonderful things every single day, then it means that you're worthless. It means that you're nobody. Oh my gosh. To feel like you're in perpetual states of people-pleasing, comparitis, perfectionism. Like you can't just be yourself in the world or everything will come crumbling down. It's exhausting. If any of this resonates with you, we may be a really good fit together for this really spacious, intimate support where I will help you break down these painful habits and patterns and ways of being in the world so that, like I said, you can take up greater space and feel more alive and more spacious and more capable of doing the things that you want to do in the world. So if you're interested in learning more, you can go to my website, thaissky.com/coaching. You can also go to the show notes and the link is there. And the process looks like finding a time that works for you to hop on a call with me. These are low pressure spaces. I don't pitch, I don't push, I don't force you to make a decision. It's just an opportunity for us to get to know each other, to see if we're the right fit. And if it does feel like the right fit, then we'll get started on our work together. Yes? Okay. So you can learn more by going to thaissky.com/coaching. You can also email me at info@thaissky.com, and I will be happy to send you the website there. So very exciting stuff, huh? I love when it's that time of the year when I can take on new coaching clients. It's a really special moment of welcoming in a new energy, a new group of women who are ready to do this work. Okay, so back to talking about impulsivity. This topic is so near and dear to my heart. You know, I remember for a job interview at Lululemon. I worked at Lululemon for about a year in my 20s. And I remember one of the interview questions was, what is your biggest strength or something along those lines? Like, why do you think that you would fit our company culture? And I remember reading something about Lululemon being all about a sense of urgency. And so that's how I responded. I said, my sense of urgency is my greatest skill set. And I believed that. And in some ways, I still do. I live my life with a sense of urgency. There is no trust in tomorrow. There is, I will make action until tomorrow happens, right? There's this sense in my blood that if I don't actively participate in my life, if I don't grab the bull by its horns, if I don't make shit happen, shit's not going to happen. And I'm beginning to see how sense of urgency, while very much valued in our culture, and companies like Lululemon, in fact, most corporate companies really thrive off of its participants, right? It's workers operating from a sense of urgency. I'm starting to wonder if sense of urgency is actually a way in which we mistrust our lives and mistrust the timing of our lives. So this episode is going to be all about me dissecting my own life in hopes that maybe it will resonate with you, as I have really sat with and grappled for a few months now what it means to be impulsive. And where is that impulsivity coming from? And is that how I want to continue to live my life? And if not, what does it take to break this pattern? So let's back up and talk about why I've even been grappling with whether or not being impulsive is something that I want to continue with or not. For, like I said, much of my life, I identified as being proud of being impulsive, or being proud of my sense of urgency, or being proud of my ability to really go after what I want. I associate a lot of the decisions I've made in the past, like jumping into full-time entrepreneurialism, even though I did not have the funds, I didn't have the savings to support me, or driving across the country and moving in with my partner at the time, even though I had nothing really lined up in California. I quit my job, I moved to California and decided to start my business full-time and had very little groundwork for that. Sure, I have been in my business for the past, I think, 5 years or 4 years up to that point. But there's a huge difference between seeing my business as a hobby, something to do on the side, versus my entire income now relying on this. So I've seen a lot of my decisions coming from this gumption, coming from this place of really going after what I want. And then lately, I have been thinking about whether or not I want to move from Los Angeles. This is how much of my thinking about impulsivity started. I've been thinking about whether or not I want to leave LA and move to Central California. It's where my husband is from. We love Central California. The pandemic, has forced us to really reevaluate some things and think about if we're happy in LA. And, my little gumption-y self, my little impulsive self was like, let's just move it and we'll figure it out as we go, right? Let's just move and we'll figure it out as we go. And I think we often see impulsivity as the opposite of overthinking. Yes? And that many of us who identify as being impulsive or spontaneous or making quick decisions, our biggest fear is that if we don't do it that way, if we don't just fuck it, let's do it, if we don't take action from that energy, the fuck it energy, then we're going to sit in something and never take action on it. And this never take action on it can feel very stagnating. It can feel very terrifying to be in the overthinking of it. Am I too? Should I? Am I? Should I? Am I? Should I? I mean, that can really lead to feelings of stagnation for me. I can't tolerate to be in that place of overthinking for too long. And to me, overthinking reeks of this indecisiveness that I really can't stand in other people. It's like, just make a decision already. This episode probably isn't for you if you really enjoy the taking time before making a decision, because that is certainly not my reality. I don't like to take my time in making a decision, because if I take my time, then I won't act and then I'll be stagnant forever. At least that's how the fear goes. There's something about being stagnant. There's something about sitting on something for too long that takes the fire out of the decision. Yes, and that fire has felt instrumental for me. Without that fire, without that quick wit, without that sense of urgency, I'm terrified that I'm just going to then break down, that I'm just going to not make any decision. And that feels like worst case scenario for me, and maybe for you too. So let's break some of this down, because while this sense of urgency can feel wonderful, and some people have said, but this is what I love about you. I love that you're spontaneous. I love that you're a go-getter. I'm not suggesting that the opposite of impulsivity is to be lackluster or to not have any fire. But I wonder if this binary way of thinking about it, we're either impulsive, which we love because it brings drama and excitement and movement, and there's a familiarity for most of us who are impulsive around this movement. It's either that or utter stagnation. That maybe this binary keeps us stuck in a pattern where we're taking impulsive actions out of a fear of our own mediocrity. It's the impulsiveness, I wonder, isn't coming from this spacious, playful place within us. It's not coming from this joyful spontaneity, but it's actually coming from a deeper wound that says that if you don't take action, if you don't constantly find movement and excitement in your life, then you will die. That stagnation, death, mediocrity is on the other side of impulsivity. That's what I want this episode to really dial in on, and to help us think about this phenomenon a little deeply. I'm not saying anything about whether it's bad or broken or wrong. I'm just wondering if we can insert some curiosity about what for many of us may just be our MO, because it's certainly been my MO. But whenever I notice within me this sense of rigidity, that this is kind of how it has to be, or else something really bad is going to happen, I'm always wondering what I'm missing. Because I don't think that we're stuck with just who we are. And I think if we lack flexibility to insert different ways of making decisions, then there's some healing that is invited to take place. I don't want to be this chronically impulsive person. I wonder if I don't spend some time tending to what may be underlying my impulsivity, my impulsive nature will actually take me further from myself. I wonder how much of my impulsivity is not a light of life flowing through me, but rather of a flow of fear. I wonder when I am impulsive if that's actually a way that I leave myself, that I self-abandon. That impulsivity is a way to jump out of my skin rather than the more grounded, curious, playful, spontaneous energy of life that flows through me when I'm a little bit more secure in my decision. I wonder if my fear of overthinking is really not about the quote unquote overthinking, but more about an inability to really trust that I can make the right decisions for me when I give myself space to really sit with what I want. Because what I've noticed for me is that while my impulsive decision making has led to some of the most incredible decisions of my life, decisions that I don't necessarily regret, my impulsivity and my sense of urgency, my striving towards betterment, towards experiences, towards adventure, has led me to some of to the love of my life, right? To my relationship. It has led me to incredible opportunities. None of it is bad, but I also wonder what may have been lost. I wonder what I have missed. I wonder what it means for me if I had slowed it down a little bit, if I had trusted that I will make the right decision if I can give myself the gift of thinking it through and feeling it through. And that maybe I would still have made the same decisions, but it would have come with a little bit more wholeness, that would have come with a little bit more integration. And that maybe it would have come with more integrity of the values I want to live my life. So I'm not suggesting I've done anything bad or wrong. There is, like I said, this isn't about regretting. This isn't about changing something beautiful about yourself. It's just a wonderment. And I hope that you can be in this wonderment with me. This has been brewing within me. These things that I'm sharing with you now have been brewing within me for a while now. And I'm kind of just freeballing it here and just wondering out loud with you, because I wonder if maybe it's not just a Thaís phenomenon, but actually that many of us have come to this point of wondering if we want to keep leading our lives with this sense of urgency and what we may be losing. What are we losing out on when we're operating from this place where we cannot trust that if we think about this a little bit more, that something may open up? So for the sake of language, let's think about the difference between impulsivity and spontaneity. And not thinking about it from like a moral judgment, but thinking about it in terms of like the different quality that these two words exists within us, so that we can think about what may be underlying each of these things. Now, when I looked up the definition for these two words, impulsive is an adjective, and it means acting or done without forethought. Okay. And when we look up the definition of spontaneous, it's also an adjective, and it's performed or occurring as a result of a sudden inner impulse or inclination and without premeditation or external stimulus. I mean, if you think about it, these two words have the same definition. They both mean to just act without thinking. But it feels different to me personally when I think about impulsive versus spontaneous. Impulsive feels like it comes from a fear that if I think about this more, my decision may be different, versus spontaneous feels like it comes from this playful space of knowing that life is about a delightful dance of knowing and playing, that there's only so much that we can ever know, and that sometimes life forces us to just be playful and just trust that it will be taken care of. where impulsive feels like it's actually coming from a place of lack of trust, that if we don't do things without thinking about it, then we're going to miss out on something. And maybe I'm being silly by trying to define these two words, but to me, they feel important. When I think about spontaneous, I think about short-term things with little consequence, like spontaneously decided to go to the park and read for the afternoon. It has little consequence, and it feels like it adds to my vitality, that it connects me to my intuition. It connects me to something bigger than me. Impulsive feels like it comes with a lot of consequence that we're terrified of really facing and dealing with if we give ourselves more time to think. Impulsive means deciding that something doesn't feel good, so we're just going to take quick action and hope that by taking this action, we don't really have to feel into the consequences of our actions. Impulsive feels like there's a bit more teeth in the game, so to speak. And that's what I want to talk to you all about, not spontaneity. Do we see that? I'm separating the two because I don't want to remove spontaneity from our lives, but I do want to interrogate impulsivity in our lives. Well, certainly in my life. I mean, you can do whatever you want. I want to create moments of spontaneity. That feels beautiful and spaciousness. But I do want to interrogate and think about my impulsivity and see if it's coming from something more problematic in my heart, coming from a wounding, so to speak. And I see this happening a lot in how we're making decisions, where we're using words like intuition, like making this decision to buy something very expensive or make a career change and name it as coming from an intuitive place, but doing it in such a way where we're kind of bulldozing other people's experience of our decision. I don't think that that's what intuition is. In fact, I'm more likely to think that that's coming from a wounding or coming from a trauma than coming from intuition. I think intuition is actually an extremely advanced skill, because what is more likely to happen is that we're more likely to take action from, especially without a lot of thinking about it and feeling it through. We're more likely to make decisions coming from what we know, past programming, patterns, wounding, trauma, than we are to make a decision that's based on this spaciousness, this playfulness, this building of something new in our lives. I don't mean to sound like a Debbie Downer here, but it's just been my own experience and you know, being a space holder, being a coach for as long as I have, I don't often see that impulsivity comes from a new place within us where we're building something new. I often see impulsivity coming from a place of patterning. I mean, I would love to be proven wrong, but I just don't think I will. Often when we're doing things impulsively, it is coming from something broken. It's very rare. It's very rare for me to feel like I'm making this really big decision and it's coming from my intuition, because often when we're making big decisions that's going to impact people, and it's not done with thoughtfulness and it's not done with an understanding of the consequences and the responsibility of our actions, it just screams of trauma, don't you think? Like I don't know. I wonder if when we're reacting impulsively and we're calling that a gut reaction, I wonder if that's probably more a trauma response rather than an intuition. I think our go-to strategy in our hearts and in our minds is old pattern. And yeah, I'm going to stick with this, y'all. You know what? The more that I'm talking about it, the more I'm just going to stick with it. Reaction, when we react, it's usually coming from an old place. Responding, in order to respond to life rather than react to life, it's going to require us to think and to be, to tolerate our inner experience. so that we can really understand why we wanted to react in a certain way and then make a different decision. Do we see that? There's the reacting is coming from an old place, a place of pattern, a place of trauma, a place of wounding, whatever, resonates. Not everything comes from trauma, but it does often come from an old response, an old way of responding to life. That's what I would consider a reaction. When we react very quickly, we're probably not responding in a way that comes from a spaciousness. In order for us to cultivate spaciousness in our lives, mindfulness, thoughtfulness, in order for us to slow down, in order for us to be more grounded, like kind of all of these words that I think so many of us like want to create in our lives, in order for us to be more thoughtful, I'm going to use that word again. It requires us to slow the fuck down. It requires us to slow the fuck down. And for us urgent people, this is almost unbearable because sense of urgency is often coming out of an inability to tolerate our emotions, our internal experience. And so we act it out in the world rather than being with our internal states. And there are many reasons why it may be intolerable for us to be in our internal states. I'm going to speak from my own experience. I grew up with parents who were impulsive themselves and made big decisions that impacted a lot of people without really without really taking their feelings and thoughts into consideration, without really thinking about what they're doing and taking responsibility for their actions. And so I grew up seeing it, and no one made sense of my internal states with me. No one taught me how to be with my own feelings. No one really guided me into my own internal experience. So why do I think that now I suddenly have control over that? So I've always been confused, right, by this idea of mindfulness. Like, what does it mean to really slow it down? Like, what does it mean to really think about, like, to really infuse mindfulness in life? I never really understood that beyond, like, brushing my teeth with a lot of thought, right? Like really noticing where my toothbrush is going or eating very mindfully. I got these small activities that we can do that can infuse mindfulness in our lives. But what does it mean to have a more mindful life? I never understood that. And now I'm starting to get a taste of it. To live a mindful life means to be able to expand our capacity to tolerate our internal experience. It's about slowing down. And there's something magical that happens when we learn how to slow down. When we learn how to slow down, when we learn how to be with our internal states, we start to be able to discern between our old patterns, our wounds, our rigidity, and our spacious, more fuller self that is moving towards healing, that is moving towards doing life in the future differently than the past. This is, again, where the reaction versus responding, right? When we can learn how to slow it down and really be with ourselves, we start to be able to respond to stimulus, to be able to respond to life rather than reacting. And I see impulsivity in many ways as reacting. And again, because I differentiated between impulsive and spontaneous, I want to be clear. It doesn't mean that I'm saying that we can't ever delight in doing something quickly. But we really have to wonder, right? We really have to think about when you make a decision like moving across the country and you make that decision within a couple days, what are you possibly avoiding? What are you scared of really facing inside of yourself? That maybe there are a myriad of feelings and thoughts that are coming up around why you want to move, around what moving means, around what it means to fulfill your dreams, about what it means about your competency, what it means about, so many aspects of your life that you may be avoiding by focusing on the drama of the move. That maybe if you gave yourself some space to really feel it out, you may move still, but it may have a different energy. It may feel more put together, so to speak. So, like I said before, I've been contemplating moving to Central Coast. Okay, so initially, like, we were just going to move, we were just going to do it. It was going to be fast, it was going to be great. And then certain things happened in our lives that made us slow down and really think about this move. And now we have until October. We have to stay in LA till at least October. And so having to stay have been really encouraging me to then, okay, since I have to stay here till October, let me really think about this. Let me see if I can do this differently. Let me see if I can really ground myself in this idea of slowing down, of responding instead of reacting. That's not to say that I may or may not move. It has nothing to do with the actual decision itself, and has everything to do with the foundation in which I'm setting for the decision to be made in a way that feels spacious. And now suddenly I'm forced to think about a lot of things that I don't think I would have thought about before, about what LA means for me, about the symbolicism of this decision, that maybe this decision has nothing really to do with moving to Central Coast or staying in LA, but it has everything to do with intimacy. It has everything to do with disappointments about what I thought LA meant for me and what hasn't manifested or been created for me, and what it is that I want. And it's forcing me to really think about my ambition and is there something that's being played out here that I'm avoiding by thinking about moving instead of really staying in LA. Right? There's so many levels and layers to this that I would have never had access to had I not taken some space and time to really think about it. Now, there is, of course, a difference between overthinking and thinking through. And let's think about those two definitions together for a minute. What gets evoked for you when you think about what may it mean when you say overthinking versus what I mean when I say thinking it through? It's a different way of experiencing ourselves and our decisions. Overthinking means kind of those ruminating thoughts that you can't stop, like the spiral of anxiety and doubt, and it's filled with what if scenarios and anxiety and fear, and it's usually by ourselves, right? When we are thinking or overthinking, we're usually doing it late at night, right? Or we can't stop thinking about it, but it's not moving anything. It's not shifting anything inside. It's just spiraling over and over and over and over and over again. That's not what I mean when I say thinking it through. When I think about thinking it through, I mean really giving ourselves the experience of understanding the multiple levels and layers of what is here. It comes usually in the presence of somebody else, like a coach, a therapist, a healer, someone who has the expertise to hold space and to help you ask the deeper questions that can maybe connect certain patterns for you, that can maybe help you tolerate some of the difficult feelings that come with these thoughts. To think it through means to access the deeper emotions, to wonder in the symbolicism of the thing. It's a different energy than overthinking. And oftentimes for us impulsive people, the reason why we tend to be scared of slowing down and thinking about things is because we're terrified that we're just going to get stuck in a cycle of thoughts. And that's probably because we didn't have people to really help us think through things. It didn't really help us trust ourselves. And so now we're compensating by taking these fast leaps and making these big proclamations and moving here, moving there. Now I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to do that. And everything feels like a roller coaster ride. And we get together with a friend we haven't seen in a month, and we've made like 5 impulsive decisions in the past month. And this friend looks at us with like big eyes, like, oh my God, all of that has been happening within the month. Yeah, that's who I'm talking to. Probably there's something really scary about being in our own minds, about trusting ourselves. And this is where getting the support of someone can be really, really helpful, so that we can learn how to be with ourselves. You know, one of the goals of my work as a coach is to offer a space for reflection where you may not previously had. And in that, we can create opportunities to get to know yourself fully, to connect with others deeper, to live a life that's more congruent. Congruency requires spaciousness. Again, if we don't create space in our lives, we're just going to keep recreating the same thing over and over and over again. It's practically impossible for us to break patterns by ourselves, because our gut reaction most of the time, our quote-unquote intuition most of the time, is going to lead us into the same cycles that we are so painfully trying to get ourselves out of it. Like I said, cultivating a capacity to listen to our intuition, I think, is a pretty advanced skill. And it comes from really being able to tolerate and be with ourselves. And if we're constantly living our lives with a sense of urgency, with impulsivity, with making decisions without much forethought, with things constantly changing, odds are we're not listening to our intuition. Our intuition, the quality of intuition is so different, and it stems from a spaciousness. I know I've been using that word a lot, but it really means being able to be with things and not just take action on things. So coaching with me is about slowing things down so we can begin to see and understand the patterns that otherwise happen very quickly, that happens without reflection or awareness. Oftentimes our difficulties come because we can't slow down to reflect. We can't slow down to think through. Overthinking is not thinking through. And the cool thing is, when we can create more space, therein lies choices that we did not previously see. This is what's missing from that binary of we're either impulsive or we're stagnating, is that what we're not able to see because we're so quickly running from ourselves is that when we can slow things down, we actually start to be able to see things and to feel things that was previously inaccessible. And that is where freedom lies. The freedom to not repeat the same self-defeating behavior. The freedom to become bigger, better versions of ourselves. So it's not about how efficient, how quick, how urgent we can live our lives, but actually how self-aware do we want to be? How whole do we wish to become? That's what working with me looks like. That's what it looks like when we slow it down and think about things with somebody else. And like I said before, I do have spots open in my one-on-one coaching. You can go to thaissky.com/coaching to learn more, to sign up for a call where we can get to know each other and decide if this is the right thing for you. This is what's possible when we really decide that breaking patterns means being able to sit with. So, if you identify really hard with anything and everything that I'm sharing here with you, you're in the right place, because I'm right there with you. And here's the thing. Here's how my process has looked like. Okay. Initially, I was very angry at this idea that I was going to have to kind of sit and not move, right? Because life forced it that way. If I had it my way, I would already be in Central Coast. I wouldn't be in LA anymore. But because of certain external factors, I'm here. Okay. So now I'm here till October. Okay. So because of this external kind of thing that's forced my impulsivity to kind of take a seat for a minute, I've had now more space and time to really think about this. So instead of doing what I usually do, which is, well, that I'm going to move in October and there's no point in talking about this now because I've already made a decision, I've decided to try this differently with the help of my support system, to use this time to really think about all these things and to really think about the symbols and to think about what LA means and to think about what moving means. And I'm by no means at the other end of this. I'm sharing something in vivo that I am processing myself. But here's what's really cool. This past 2 weeks, I've been really bubbling with something is feeling really stuck, really stagnant by me not having clarity of what's going to happen in my life past October. Because if I move, everything will be different. If I stay, everything will be different. Choices, availability, possibilities are all different if I move versus staying. And to not have that clarity feels like death. It feels so painful to have to just sit in this. It feels like something within me is dying. It is awful, you all. It has led to so many teary nights, to so many moments of feeling unbearable feelings of stagnation and stuck and not knowing who I am. It's feeling like there's something is really wrong here. But I've stuck with it. I've stuck with it. And luckily I have the right support system that has helped me stay in it. And this weekend, something lifted. I started to break open. Like something died so that something else could exist. Things no longer felt quite as binary. It's like I suddenly started to just be like, oh, this decision isn't what's life or death for me. In fact, whatever decision I make, like I'm gonna trust it. I will figure it out, whatever. But it's never been about the decision, and it's been about who I want to be in this decision. And that means letting things die so that something can break open. And like I said, this just happened this past weekend. I'm still very much in this. I don't know what's going to come out on the other side, but it was the first glimmer of light that I saw after months of some pretty brutal darkness, and particular 2 weeks of a real type of death that felt really terrible. And I wouldn't have been able to do that alone, one, but two, nothing about it felt like intuitive. Nothing about this felt like, oh, this is me following my intuition, right? Or it didn't feel like this feels like my gut instinct. No. Breaking patterns comes sometimes, not all the times, as a deeply disorganized and disruptive and counterintuitive experience. Because if it's familiar, it's probably not new, right? If it's familiar, it's usually not new. And pattern breaking requires us to let go of the familiar and into something new. And things are shifting and are moving inside me. I'm not stagnant, right? That's the fear, right? Of the urgency. If I'm not urgenting, I'm stagnant. But I'm actually not stagnant. I may not be making an external decision, but things internally are moving. Oftentimes when we're feeling stuck, it's because we're afraid to feel something. I wrote this about it in my Instagram today, so you can check it out. Today is June 28th. But there's often a stuckness is often like an emotional constipation. It's an invitation that we're not experiencing something within, or we're terrified to let something go inside of us. Usually stagnation has nothing to do with what is outside of us. Actually, so little of the type of freedom we're seeking comes from outside of us. A vacation, a move to a new city, none of it's really going to offer what we're really seeking, which is this internal liberation that often comes when we can learn how to be with ourselves and be with these painful binaries and painful patterns within us. And I'm very proud of myself. I'm proud of myself because I feel like something that's very ancient is coming to the surface. And who's to say that this is how this pattern is going to be broken forever? Let's not be delusional. This type of work takes time, and it takes us doing things differently and painfully over and over and over again. But it feels different. And I gotta say, that feels really good. And so who knows if we'll move or not? We may move now or in 5 years from now, but it's just no longer really has been that important anymore, because no move can possibly replace this expansiveness that can get built inside of us when we can really be with ourselves. So this seems like a good place to wrap it up for now. And the final question that I just kind of want you all to be thinking about is the impulsivity coming from an urgency, or is it coming from something spacious? Is your decision coming from a thought through, or is it coming from a fear of overthinking? Is this really a gut reaction, or may this be connected to something deeper and more familiar, wound, trauma response, etc.? I guess these are a lot of questions to ask. And ultimately, knowing that, gosh, I wish I could leave you all with like this brilliant words of wisdom, but now that I'm here, I feel all this pressure, and I'm like, I don't know if I have the right thing to say. I guess I just want us to have the space and the trust that life is evolving perfectly for you. If you could really trust that, what may feel different? Can you give yourself permission to let things take time? In fact, time is an illusion. It doesn't exist. And there's something beautiful that can happen when we can let ourselves take time and think it through and really be with the internal experience. Yes? All right. I'm sending all of you love. Thank you for being here with me today. I adore you. Thanks for being such a supporter of the podcast. It means so much. This is definitely a one-woman show. I do it all back here, and I love doing it. And I love knowing that it's resonating and landing with people out in the world. So please don't hesitate to share this episode. And tag me on Instagram at I am Thaís Sky. And if you're interested in coaching, go to thaissky.com/coaching, or you can email me at info@thaissky.com. All right. I will see you all soon.